I never thought I'd fall in love again at 65. I had already made peace with the silence, the long dinners alone, the empty half of the bed. I thought that part of my life was over. But then, she appeared. And for 2 years, I remembered what it felt like to be alive again, to be seen, to laugh so hard I cried, to hold someone's hand and feel like it was the most natural thing in the world. But I didn't think I'd lose her. Not that soon. Not like that. And now I'm learning how to keep going. One quiet day at a time. My name is Helen. I'm 70 now. If you had asked me 10 years ago what life would look like today, I would have painted something quiet, predictable, a little lonely maybe, but peaceful. I thought the chaos was behind me, the heartbreak, the noise, the mess. I was married once for almost 40 years. We raised 2 children, built a house, lived a life that on the surface looked full. But even back then, long before he left, I felt something hollow in me. Something I didn't have the words for. When he finally walked out, no big scene, just a quiet departure, I told myself I'd be fine. I poured my energy into work. I retired from teaching not long after. My days got smaller. I went from someone who used to laugh in crowded rooms to someone who sat quietly at the edge of her own life, watching it pass like a train she never boarded. I didn't expect anything else. I certainly didn't expect her. We met at a bookshop downtown, both reaching for the same copy of a forgotten novel. She smiled, said something about fate. I really laughed for the first time in years. Her name was Miriam. She had the kind of presence that made rooms feel warmer. She asked me if I wanted to get coffee. I almost said no, but something in me, something buried for a long time, said yes. I was 65. I didn't think I was allowed to fall in love again, but I did. We spent 2 years together. 2 years that felt like a breath held in my chest, like finding the missing page in a story I thought I already knew the ending to. She taught me how to be soft again, how to be unafraid. This isn't just about grief. It's about what comes after. It's about holding on when everything feels like it's slipping through your fingers. It's about healing slowly and unevenly. It's about rediscovering who you are when the world you built collapses around you. And if you're watching this, maybe you know what I mean. We met on a rainy Thursday afternoon. The kind of day where the sky can't decide whether it wants to cry or clear up. I ducked into the little bookshop on the corner of Maple and 3rd, not looking for anything in particular, just trying to stay dry. She was already inside, wearing this pale blue raincoat and humming something soft under her breath. Our hands reached for the same book. Something obscure, something no one else I knew had ever read. She smiled and said, "Well, this feels like a meet-cute, doesn't it?" I laughed, awkward and surprised. She asked if I'd read it before. I said yes. She said she hadn't. We stood there talking for 20 minutes about stories and endings and why some books feel like old friends. Before I left, she asked if I wanted to get coffee. I paused. I hesitated. Then I said yes. I remember how alive I felt just walking to the cafe with her. Like I'd been asleep for a long time and had finally opened my eyes. Falling in love at 65 is different. It's not frantic or full of games. There's no pretending, no proving. It's quiet, deep, honest. We talked about everything, our families, our regrets, the songs that still made us cry. I told her about my failed marriage. She told me about losing her sister to cancer. We weren't trying to impress each other. We were just being. Our days together were simple. Mornings with coffee and the crossword. Grocery runs that turned into adventures. Sunday drives with no destination. She had this way of turning ordinary moments into something sacred. She sang while she cooked. Off-key, always. She made me dance with her in the kitchen while pasta boiled on the stove. She wore mismatched socks and never folded towels the way I liked, and I adored her for it. We'd lie in bed and talk for hours. About nothing. About everything. Sometimes we'd sit on the porch in silence, just listening to the world move around us. I didn't need excitement. I didn't need fireworks. I had her. We took trips. Not far. Little road getaways to places neither of us had been. She loved antique stores. I loved watching her get excited over things with chipped paint and faded edges. She said they had stories. I told her so did we. One night we watched a thunderstorm from the couch, her head on my shoulder. She whispered, "I wish I'd met you sooner." I remember my throat tightening. I told her, "You met me right on time. We never said forever." We knew better than to make promises we couldn't keep, but we cherished each day like it was on borrowed time. And even now, even with her gone, those 2 years live in me. They rise up in the smell of lavender, in the sound of rain on the windows, in the quiet spaces where her laughter used to echo. I didn't just fall in love at 65. I found home. It happened so fast. One morning, she said she felt tired. Not the usual tired, this was different. I offered to make her tea, told her to stay in bed, and I'd handle breakfast. But when I came back with the mug, she was sitting up, staring out the window. Her eyes didn't follow me when I walked in. Something in me knew, before the words, before the panic, before the sirens, that something was wrong. The hospital was bright. Too bright. I remember the hum of the lights, the way the floor tiles looked too clean. I remember the nurse's voice, calm and distant, like she was trying not to scare me. I sat in the corner of that sterile room for hours, holding her hand while machines beeped and whispered things I didn't understand. Then it stopped. No final words. No drawn-out goodbye. Just a sudden hollow silence. I stayed there long after they told me she was gone. I couldn't leave her side. I kept thinking if I sat there long enough, maybe she'd open her eyes. Maybe this was just a bad dream I hadn't woken up from yet. The funeral was a blur. People I didn't recognize hugged me. Said things like, she was one of a kind and at least she's at peace. I nodded, smiled, thanked them. But inside I was screaming. Coming home was the worst. Her shoes were by the door. Her glasses were on the nightstand. The book she was reading still had a receipt tucked into chapter 12. I walked into the kitchen and saw the coffee mug she'd left in the sink the day before she fell ill. Everything was still there. Except her. The house echoed with memories, but she was gone. I tried to sleep in our bed that first night, but her side was too empty. The silence pressed against my chest like weight I couldn't push off. I ended up on the couch, holding her sweater like it was a lifeline. For days, I moved through the house like a ghost. I catch myself pouring 2 cups of coffee, reaching for the phone to call her when I saw something funny on the news. I'd open the closet just to catch her scent in the fabric. Grief is a strange thing. It doesn't come all at once. It seeps in slowly. It waits in the corners, in the routines, in the unexpected. I remember one morning, I went to open the curtains and sunlight poured into the room. And I got angry. Angry that the world was still turning, that birds were still singing, that children were laughing down the street. How could everything be so normal when she wasn't here? There's a kind of loneliness that doesn't have a name. It's not just being alone. It's being surrounded by memories and having no one to share them with anymore. It's realizing that every plan, every dream, every small joy you imagined is now just a shadow. I didn't eat much. I didn't talk much. People called. I let it ring. I couldn't bear to hear someone else's voice when the only one I wanted was hers. I sat in her favorite chair one evening. The sunset was pouring in just the way she liked. I closed my eyes and pretended, just for a moment, that she was still there, that I'd turn my head and see her smiling at me. But when I opened my eyes, it was just me. And the quiet. Some mornings I didn't want to get out of bed. The world outside kept moving, but inside I felt like I was frozen in time. I'd lie there, eyes open, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the ache in my chest to settle, but it never did. It just lived there like a second heartbeat. Her pillow. I couldn't bear to move it. Every morning I fluffed it gently like she was still there, like maybe she just stepped out for a moment and would be back soon. It sounds silly, I know, but it gave me something to do. Some ritual that made the silence a little more bearable. I started talking to her. Not out loud at first, just little thoughts in my head. Then, eventually, I found myself whispering into the empty room. You'd laugh at this, wouldn't you? I miss you so much today. What would you have said about this dress? And the dreams? Sometimes I'd hear her laugh. That same laugh that used to make me fall in love with her all over again. I'd see her in the hallway, in the garden, in the kitchen holding a cup of tea. And for those few seconds, those cruel, beautiful seconds, I'd believe she was still here. But then I'd wake up, and the emptiness would crash in again. I stopped sleeping through the night. I'd wake at 2 a.m. and just sit in the dark, staring at nothing. My body felt heavy, like I was wearing grief on my skin. Simple things, making breakfast, brushing my hair, even getting dressed, felt impossible. I'd skip meals, not because I wasn't hungry, but because food without her felt pointless. I remember standing in the kitchen one day, holding a spoon, just crying. Not loudly, not dramatically, just the slow, quiet kind of crying that felt like it had no beginning and no end. My energy disappeared, not just physically, emotionally, spiritually. Everything felt gray. Friends would check in and I'd lie, say I was okay, that I was managing, but inside I was crumbling. There were days I didn't shower, days I didn't open the curtains, days I didn't speak to a single soul. I wasn't living. I was existing. I kept replaying everything. What if we'd gone to the doctor sooner? What if I'd noticed something different that day? What if she had stayed home instead of going for that walk? Grief makes you cruel to yourself. It whispers blame in your ear. It tells you should have done more, seen more, loved better. And guilt, it's always there in the background, even for the things you couldn't control. I didn't want people to see me like that. I didn't want pity. I didn't want empty words or cliches. I just wanted her. I wanted my life back. The life we were building. The life that felt stolen. Every little thing reminded me of her. A certain song. The scent of rosemary. A cardigan she always wore when it got chilly. Her laugh still lived in the walls. Her warmth still lingered in the fabric of the house. But she wasn't there. And every morning I opened my eyes to that truth again. Over and over. That was the hardest part. The repetition of loss. The way it greets you each day like a brand new heartbreak. It happened quietly. No grand sign, no flash of light. Just a moment. One of those still, ordinary moments that somehow changes everything. I was sitting on the porch. It had rained that morning, and everything smelled like earth and lilacs. She used to love that scent. Said it reminded her of her grandmother's garden. I had her journal in my hands. I'd found it weeks earlier, tucked inside her dresser. I hadn't been ready to open it. But that day, I did. The pages were worn, her handwriting soft and slanted. She always wrote like she spoke, gentle, thoughtful. I flipped through memories I hadn't lived but could feel through her words. And then, halfway through, I found a page marked with a ribbon. It was addressed to me, not dramatic, not poetic, just her in her voice. She wrote, "If you're reading this, I hope you're not letting grief turn you into a shadow. You've given me the best years of my life, and I need you to keep going. Not just for me, for you, because you are still here, still breathing, still alive." I cried like I hadn't cried before, not from pain but from love, from the sheer force of being seen, even in her absence. She had left me a map, a reminder that life didn't end with her. And for the first time I looked around, and I saw color. The trees, the sky, the steam rising from my cup of tea. I felt the wind touch my skin and realized I could still feel, I could still be, I was still here. I walked back inside and stood in front of the mirror. I hadn't really looked at myself in weeks. The face looking back at me was tired, yes, but it was mine. It was real. It had stories, wrinkles that held joy and loss, eyes that had seen love and survived it. That night I made dinner for one, not out of habit, not out of duty, but because I wanted to nourish myself. I lit a candle at the table, played one of her favorite records, and for the first time in months, I smiled. Just a small, quiet smile. But it was real. Something inside me softened. She wouldn't want me to vanish into grief. She wouldn't want me to live half a life. That night, I wrote back to her in my own journal. I told her about the rain, about the tea, about the moment I felt her voice in the wind. And in that letter, I promised that I would try, that I would keep waking up, that I would keep breathing. And eventually, I would find a way to live again. Not the same way. Never the same way, but in a way that honored her, and honored me. The first time I stepped outside again, I remember squinting into the sunlight like I hadn't seen it in years. The breeze felt unfamiliar against my skin, and the world looked slightly tilted, like everything had moved on without me. But I took one step, then another. I walked slowly to the mailbox, holding on to the railing like I was learning to walk again. In a way, I wasn't just walking, I was re-entering life. I started making coffee for one. Not because I'd forgotten she was gone, but because I remembered I was still here. I still liked the smell. Still enjoyed that first warm sip. The house didn't feel like home anymore, not right away. It felt like a museum of us. But I began opening the windows again, letting light in, rearranging little things. Not erasing her, never that, but making space for the version of me that was emerging through the grief. One day, I opened the old box of watercolors she bought me for my 66th birthday. I hadn't touched it since she passed. I was scared it would hurt too much, but instead it healed something. I painted what I remembered, a corner of the garden she planted, her blue shawl on the porch swing, her silhouette in the kitchen light. The colors didn't match real life, but they felt honest. And then came the garden. She loved that garden more than almost anything. I started tending it again, not out of obligation, but because it connected us. Digging into the soil felt like reaching through time. I could almost hear her humming when I watered the roses. Eventually, I found the courage to join a widow support group. The first meeting, I barely spoke, but I listened. To stories of loss, resilience, laughter in the face of devastation. It reminded me I wasn't the only one learning to live again. Those people became anchors. We weren't trying to fix each other. We were just surviving together. And in that shared silence, something gentle bloomed. These days, my mornings are quieter but intentional. I wake up just before sunrise. Not from an alarm, but from habit. I sit by the window with a blanket she crocheted, sip my coffee, and watch the sky shift from gray to gold. That moment, those few silent minutes, are sacred to me. Then I stretch. Nothing fancy. Just enough to remind my body that it still works, still serves me. I keep a little corner in the bedroom for yoga and slow movement. After that, I light a candle. Sometimes I pray. Sometimes I just breathe. I've learned the power of stillness, of presence. I write in a journal 3 pages every morning. It's not always profound. Sometimes it's just rambling, but it helps. Breakfast is simple. Oatmeal, berries, green tea. I try to eat well, not perfectly, but with love. She always believed food carried memory, and I carry that belief now, too. In the afternoons, I volunteer at the library twice a week. The smell of old books, the soft hum of pages turning. It brings me peace. Some days I paint. Some days I garden. Some days I do nothing, and I've made peace with that, too. I walk in the evenings, just around the neighborhood. I nod at the same trees, the same porch lights. The world hasn't changed much, but I have. Nights are harder. They always will be. But I've made a small ritual. Her favorite record, a warm bath, a chapter from a book she loved. And right before bed, I whisper goodnight to her. It's not the life we planned, but it's a life, and I'm living it. One day, one breath, one morning at a time. Grief has taught me things I never could have learned in a textbook. It's a force of nature that shakes you down to your core. And when it's done, you're left standing there, empty yet somehow more. I used to think that love was a fierce thing, like fire, like passion that burned with intensity. But now I know that love can be quiet, can be still, can be a steady presence, like a river flowing beneath the surface, moving even when you can't see it. Love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's gentle. Sometimes it's silent. It's the hand on your shoulder when you're too tired to speak. It's the glance across the room that says everything without a word. She taught me that. She made me stronger without ever raising her voice. And grief is a paradox. It feels like it will swallow you whole, like there's no way out. But over time, you realize it doesn't break you. It reshapes you, carves out space in your heart that you didn't know existed. And that space, it fills with memories, love, and yes, even joy. I've cried more than I ever thought I could. In the car, on the porch, in the middle of the night. But here's what I've learned: crying is not weakness. It's proof that you loved. It's proof that your heart was big enough to let someone in. So I cry, not because I'm broken, but because I am human, and I'm still here. As time has passed, I've reflected on love and what it really means. I've wondered if there's room in my life for love again. Would it feel like betrayal? Could I open my heart to someone else without feeling guilty? The truth is, I don't know. But I do know this: love is not finite. It doesn't disappear just because someone is gone. It transforms. It expands. The love I had with her will always be a part of me, woven into who I am. And maybe, just maybe, there's room for new love. Not to replace what's gone, but to build something new. I don't think I'm ready yet. But I also don't think love should be something we shy away from even after loss. There's no shame in opening your heart. No shame in feeling the possibility of companionship again. Life doesn't stop, and neither should our capacity to love. We deserve to love, and we deserve to be loved. Lately, I've been reading messages from people who follow my journey. So many of you have reached out with your own stories of loss, of starting over, of learning to live again. It's overwhelming in the best way. The comments, the letters, the shared experiences, each one feels like a hand reaching across the divide of pain, offering comfort and understanding. I never expected that. I thought I was alone in this journey, but I've come to realize there's a whole community of us, people who have loved deeply, lost, and are finding our way back to life. And we're not doing it alone. In my own small way, I want to be a part of that. I want to create a space for those of us who are grieving, who are transitioning, who are just trying to figure out what comes next. A space where we can be vulnerable, share our pain, and remind each other that it's okay to not have all the answers. So, as I read these messages, I think about how much we can offer each other. How even in our grief, we can still give, we can still connect, we can still rebuild. And no matter how dark it feels, there's always someone who's willing to walk beside you. Even when the road seems endless, there's a hand outstretched. There's hope in the shared experience of others. Maybe that's the greatest lesson grief has taught me. We don't have to go through this alone. We never were. Being a late bloomer isn't something we usually celebrate in a world that values youth, speed, and instant success. But there's a quiet strength in being a late bloomer. You've lived through decades of change, of challenges, of heartache, and yet you're still here. Still growing. Still becoming. I've met so many incredible people in their 60s, 70s, 80s, people who are just starting to pick up the pieces of their lives and build something new. Some have started businesses, others have taken up art or travel. One woman I met started learning how to play the piano at 72. Another started writing poetry after her husband passed. These aren't just stories of survival. These are stories of reinvention, of finding strength after loss, of embracing life's second chapters. Because life doesn't stop at 60. It's just beginning. I know we often feel invisible when we get older, like we're fading into the background, like the world is moving on without us. But I'm here to tell you, we're not invisible. We're just arriving. We're the ones with wisdom, with stories, with experience. And we're more than capable of writing new chapters. The small joys of life have become everything to me. They were always there, of course, but they've taken on new meanings since she passed. Now, it's the little things that make all the difference. A walk in the park, the warmth of a cup of tea shared with friends, the peacefulness of a good book. It's easy to forget how important these things are. How many of us get caught up in the rush of life, always thinking we need to be doing more, achieving more, running faster. But I've come to realize that the simple things, the ones we might have overlooked before, are often the ones that fill us with the most peace. I've joined a book club recently. It's a small thing, but it's become one of the highlights of my week. I read a chapter, then gather with others to discuss it, to laugh, to share. It's a connection. It's a reminder that life is still here, that there are still opportunities to learn, to grow, to engage. I also started taking a watercolor class at the community center. I never thought I'd have the patience for it, but there's something incredibly therapeutic about picking up a brush and letting the colors flow. It's not about being perfect, it's about being present. These small joys don't erase the pain. They don't fill the hole left behind. But they remind me that there's still beauty in the world. There's still life to be lived. I think if she could see me now, she'd be proud of the way I'm learning to smile again. She'd want me to keep living, to keep finding joy, to keep pursuing my passions. I carry her in everything I do. In the way I laugh, in the way I show up for others, in the way I continue to move forward even when it's hard. I carry her in my heart and I always will. But I also carry the lessons she taught me, lessons about strength, love, and the importance of never giving up no matter how old we are. And now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to start over? How did you find the courage to do it? Share your story in the comments below. We're all in this together. If you felt something today, if this resonated with you, please leave a like. It helps others find this space, this community of people who are learning to live again after loss. And if you're figuring life out after 60, after heartbreak, after loss, if you're ready to keep growing, to keep moving forward, this channel is for you. Subscribe and let's continue this journey together.